Welcome to the Zencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Zencast and the managing director of B Squared. If you are a new listener and this is your first Zencast, then welcome. The aim of the podcast is really simple. We want to reach lots and lots of people and help everyone learn more about special educational needs and disability. On this week's episode, we discussed parenting a neurodivergent child, and I was joined by Kate Steer. Kate is a neurodivergent family coach and education consultant from Nurtured Neurokids. She is a parent of a neurodiverse child, giving her lots of insights and understanding so that she can empower parents to be their child's biggest advocate in school and at home. Now, as everyone knows, the Zencast is produced and created by us here at B Squared. We help schools to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. And over the last few years, we've been creating an inclusive assessment system that can be used with all pupils in primary schools. The system has different levels of detail for different levels of ability, but it makes looking at whole school data and comparing your SEND and your non-SEN and being inclusive really simple. It also reduces teacher workload by only having one system to use, and our new features around our AI make report writing really easy. And of course, having one system saves money. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through the software and what it can do for you. Now, let's get on with the podcast. My guest this week is Kate Steer. Kate is a neurodivergent family coach and educational consultant from Nurtured Neurokids. She has taught for 15 years and supported neurodivergent children for over 20 years, both in and out of school. She is a parent of a neurodiverse child, giving her lots of insights and understandings that she can empower parents to be their child's biggest advocate in school and at home. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Dale. Thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. There is lots to parenting a neurodivergent child. You're always living in the past, present, and future, worrying about all the things you did before because you were told to when you were less informed, supporting them in the present and all the things going on right now, but also worrying about what their future holds for them and how to ensure they have a future they want. That's a lot going on.
It is a lot, yeah. Those three things, I could talk about each one for several days. I think, touching on the first one, I guess, for families sort of post-diagnosis, and for some families, that might be something that they're expecting. And for other families, it might not be. It might be something that they didn't, obviously they're kind of going for an autism or ADHD assessment, but I think some parents still come away from it quite surprised, or they sort of say, I had a bit of a feeling, but we didn't really know. And there's quite a lot to process in that. And for some parents, they feel, I guess, quite a lot of shame on reflection of, like you said, living in the past. Had we have known sooner, especially I think if your child is receiving a diagnosis sort of 9, 10 or above, they may already have been struggling in school for quite a long time, and no one really knew what their challenges were specifically, why they were struggling so much. I think parents can feel, it's quite a heavy weight to carry. I guess we can't change, and that's the thing that when I'm speaking to parents, we can't change what came before, and now, and that's an amazing thing. And some people don't receive that diagnosis until, they're adults. So actually, this is a really positive thing that they are only 10, they're only 14, and they've still got the rest of their life. And so let's work on kind of now, the present, like you said. Let's talk about the present. And that's the greatest thing we can do, really, is focus on our child that's standing in front of us today.
I think when you kind of find out you get diagnosis and you maybe look back at all the things you did, which you shouldn't do now you know, but it's like, but you didn't know then.
Yeah.
You're never doing something which you know is wrong. You're always doing the best for your child with the information you had at that time. Now you're much more informed.
Yeah.
But back then you didn't.
That's the thing. People are only ever doing the best, like you said, with the information they know today. And everything is evolving all the time. We find out, we're all learning every single day about neurodivergent brains and profiles. And also the child, if you have an autistic child at 4, they're not the same anyway as your autistic child at at 8 or 10. So you do have to evolve. You do have to change your parenting or adapt how, the environment is, your expectations of them, what support they need, because they're going through different things at different times, whether that's primary school, secondary school. So yeah, it definitely is a kind of a constant evolving thing anyway. So we're all just doing the best we can.
You can't change the past. The past
No.
is the past.
Yeah.
The main thing to do is be as informed as you can and make sure your relationship with your child is as strong as it can be.
Absolutely. I think that's the, absolute fundamental for me is always hold your relationship with your child as the greatest thing, because all the support and strategies and things that people can suggest, none of those are really going to work unless you have a very strong relationship with your child. Not none of them, but it will make it a lot harder if your relationship with your child isn't kind of as strong as it needs to be. So always kind of hold on to that as much as you can and prioritize that over everything. Place that at the center of everything you're doing. I always kind of say, put your child's mental health above everything else. But I think it's also your connection with your child, because also so many of our children rely on us for co-regulation and being somebody who is their advocate. We should be their greatest advocate. We are their safe people, and that's what we need to say to our children. I am your safe person. I will always have your back. You can always come to me, whatever they've done. If they mess up, we all mess up, but you need to have someone in your corner. So like you said, the relationship you have with your child and nurturing that, the word I love, nurture, but nurturing that relationship in all that you do is just so important. And seeing your child outside of all the other stuff you're managing, whether it's behavioural, school or those things, is kind of just keep holding on to your child and the relationship that you have.
And there are times where you are going to go against the advice you're told to take your child in and just make them go in or anything else. But you need to think about your relationship with that child, what is right for them. And they trust you to look after them. They trust you to keep them safe. And if you start putting them in situations where they really don't feel safe, they really don't want to be there, then you are going to damage that relationship between you and your child. So although some professional might tell you to do something, you do know your child best.
Yeah.
They have a much greater experience of wider conditions and support and strategies and things like that. So you do need to listen to them, but deep down, you know what's kind of right.
Absolutely, yes. And that's such an important thing about the trust, is that, and for a lot of children, trusting someone is really, really hard. And, trusting kind of adults outside of their family are really difficult. So yes, they need to have that trust in you, that if they shared something with you, that you will, I guess, fight for them and you'll fight for the support that they need. And that is really hard, because if you've got a child that is struggling to go into school, and the right thing to do is obviously to support your child in the moment, and also parents have other things where they might need to go to work, and so it is a really difficult, it's always a difficult juggling act, but I think we always mess up. The point of any parenting is not to be perfect. And this is not just about neurodivergent children. This is just parenting generally. We're not trying to be perfect parents at all. That's impossible. And we all mess up. But the important thing is, when we rupture the relationship with our children, which is what happens when we mess up, that we repair that and we apologize, or we explain the situation, mummy or daddy, whoever it is, I shouldn't maybe have reacted like that, or I shouldn't have phrased it like that, or I'm really sorry that it came across more grumpy than I meant to. That's on me, and that's because I was hungry or tired or whatever. So, or I'm really sorry that I had to take you into school, and I know how that feels for you, and it might feel like I don't have your back, and that isn't how it is. I have to go to work, and so I think, rather than just sort of saying to them, this is how it is, and you'll do what I say, and, rather that kind of authoritative way of managing a situation is preparing when things go wrong or not how your child would like them to. And they might not understand it in the moment, and that's okay. But you just keep preparing when something challenging or tricky happens.
It's also really important that you're showing that you're vulnerable, you're showing that you make mistakes, and you're showing how you manage them and how you respond and how you let that other person know. My daughter has just started her GCSEs, and the first morning she set an alarm for 5:30, or she was going to, but she forgot to set her alarm. And my wife noticed that she hadn't heard anything. It was about 6:30 or so. I don't know why they wake up so early, but they do. And she went in, and my daughter kind of exploded and jumped out of bed, and my wife just left the room going, oh dear, it's going to be a bad morning. And about 20 seconds later, my daughter just came into our room going, I'm so sorry. And she knows that she reacted because it was a situation, and she got that she reacted to the situation, but she kind of reacted to a person and then realized that that person did nothing wrong, was helping them, and has apologized. And that's the sort of thing that whenever we generally react, we're not reacting to what our child's done. It's something else, our work, life, something else has made us. And maybe that child did the final bit of thing on the buckaroo.
Yeah.
And off you went. But it was a tiny bit, and the rest of it was not about them. And so, yeah, it's being that vulnerable person, admitting you wrong, and showing your children how you deal with that is really important.
Yeah, and I think unless we have those conversations, our children don't know that, and they will always assume it's about them. And especially neurodivergent children who can have quite low self-esteem and confidence and have quite sort of innate feelings of shame about things. And so they would always assume, not always, but the majority of time, they would assume that it's them. For all children, if mummy or daddy are upset or angry, it's got to be because of me. So I think, you gave a really good example of a child who's much older and that's what they have been used to growing up. And it doesn't mean that a 6-year-old child is going to know how to do that. But you just keep giving those examples over time. You keep scaffolding kind of, it's the same, if you want your child to be kind, you don't teach kindness, you just show kindness. And it's the same thing. If you want your child to be able to mess up in life, then you need to kind of be honest when you've messed up rather than hide it, and just discuss that. And I think that's really important, especially for those who have a perfectionist tendency and find it really hard to mess up. I'm one of them. So yeah, I think it's really important that we have these kind of open, vulnerable, this wasn't on you, this is on me. And until we do that, we can't expect children to do the same. And that's, I guess, part of that developing emotional regulation, which doesn't kind of develop until much later. But our children need lots and lots of examples of that across kind of their childhood.
Definitely. And one of the conversations as my daughter got older was I try to let her know that as much as I can, I accommodate all her rules, all her needs, all those things. I said I really try. But I told her that because I'm also neurodivergent, but I think everyone has their own rules.
Yeah.
So I say to her, so you've got your rules, but I've also got mine that I'm living by, that I'm trying to do. And sometimes my rules are not compatible with yours. Now, sometimes I will find a way to make that work, but other times I cannot. And it was just that as they get older and that understanding that actually when they it's they acknowledge, actually, you are doing a lot for me because I need it. And they get it. Actually, I get that you can't do that. And it's the end of the world. It's getting into that position where they're going, yeah, you can't do it for me today, but it's not a never ever thing. It's just right now.
Yeah.
And it is finding that balance between you and your child of what can you do, but what can't you do, and when can't you do it. And it's having those open conversations, I think, are really important.
And I think that's obviously much easier as your child gets older, because, and lots of families who I work with, they are neurodivergent themselves. And so you're parenting a neurodivergent child, you're neurodivergent. And so you generally trigger each other because of kind of just situations. And it's likely you might both be triggered by the same experience that you're in or environment. And so you're both trying to manage your own nervous systems at the same time, which is really hard. But I think that's that thing of when we have younger children, even though we're struggling, we are the adult in that moment, and we have to, we can't sort of leave them on their own with that and just tend to kind of how we're feeling. There is a thing of, okay, I need to be the steady person in this moment. I know how I'm feeling, but I know that my child is not going to be capable of this. And so I think it's always that thing of expectations, and sometimes society expects too much out of young children, and they expect them to be able to manage this and apologize, and and that's just not true. When we look at kind of child development and brain development, that's not the case. So I think when we can understand it, and I think in terms of behavior, and I know that's a topic for another time, but I think when we just understand our children better, and I think that's one of my biggest things as a coach, is when you understand your child, it's easier to support them, because kind of what is happening for your child in that moment. And so it allows you to be more compassionate. And I think, and that's about ourselves as well, people who are learning about themselves, whenever you understand a situation better, it allows you to lead with greater compassion. And I think that's what we definitely need when we're parenting neurodivergent children, is a lot of that compassion to what they're going through in that moment. And as the parent, it is right that that's the priority in that moment.
And sometimes your child will do things or have a requirement you will never understand. And as you look back on it many years later, they also do not understand. My daughter, we used to go, so we lived out in the woods, loads of woods near us. We used to go cycling, and my youngest always had to be in the front. Always. If her sister got her wheel slightly in front of it, she would stop and have a meltdown.
Mm.
And we'd all literally, and her sister would do it. If she'd wound her up, her sister would do it just to know that if I do this, she's going to have it. And it's just that sisterly thing of being horrible to each other. And we did everything. And sometimes she would, stop pedaling, suddenly brake for something, and someone would go, and it was just, and so we knew it, and we worked around it, but we discussing it, going, you were an absolute lemon. Why didn't she go, I don't know. See, can you put anything with all your now life experience, looking back, have you got anything? She'd go, nothing.
Well, it's probably a control thing, or, being at the front meant she was the best, or, I mean, I don't know your daughter, so I'm not, sure, but I guess if that was a parent coming to me, those would be my first sort of thoughts of.
Or if she wasn't at the front, she might be forgotten and left behind, but she still can't say, it was that feeling, and it's fascinating. We worked around so many things, and as you got older, we laugh about it and we talk about it, but she still can't explain why some of them. She's doing psychology and sociology for her GCSEs, but she still struggles with some understanding in herself. She understands others amazingly.
Yeah.
But I think you can't always label those things within yourself or understand why you did it. And perhaps it is being left behind, being better than her sister because she's the youngest or something, or worrying about not being good enough. So whatever, but she still can't. And
yeah, she might not know that about herself at all.
So you can't always kind of logical work out, they're doing this because of this, so therefore.
No. And I don't think that's the goal either, to kind of overanalyze everything, really. I think, sometimes we put this in a bracket of, well, I can just tell they're dysregulated, and it doesn't really matter why. And I'm not going to put that pressure on them. And, you tell me why, or, leading with a question of why have you, reacted like this, or why are you so angry? That's really hard for a child to explain. And it's not really on them, particularly as a young child, to be able to explain to us what they're going through. We shouldn't necessarily put that responsibility on them to explain every situation. I guess it's up to us as parents to do the work in understanding, different profiles of neurodivergent brains and what that could be. Or, like I said, we just understand in that moment, this situation, it makes my child feel dysregulated. This situation is really overwhelming for my child. I kind of don't really need to know the why. I just know that this is how they respond in that moment. And so what can I do to support them, in that situation again, is really the important thing, rather than trying to unpick the why, because it isn't actually that important. The bit that's important is what what is your child telling you or showing you about how they're managing that situation?
My daughter struggles with the concept of time.
Yeah.
She'll go on a flight somewhere. How long's the flight? 8 hours. Okay. 20 minutes later, how long's left? And you're going, we've still got hours. Okay. Half an hour later, how long's left? I'm going, okay, let's try this a different way. You can watch 4 films. Then her face dropped and she got it. Yeah. Do I need to spend hours helping her understand time? No, I've just found a way that works.
Strategy. And it's like parents who sort of say quite often their children struggle with turning off screens and things. And that might just be because the strategy that they're using at the time doesn't translate to their children. So if you say to a child, okay, you've got 10 minutes or you've got 20 minutes, there's not many young children who will be able to work out what 20 minutes is or be able to clock watch. And if you do ask them to clock watch, they're going to be really anxious about that. And they're not going to be able to enjoy their program if they've got a timer or something. It's like, when will that be? When will that be? So I always say, yes, can you say to them, you've got 3 episodes? And then, can you check in with them at some point? How many episodes have you watched? How many have we got left? So that they've got that real kind of, they understand an episode. It doesn't matter to them how long that is. They don't need to know that. They just need to know, I've got 3 episodes of Peppa Pig and then it's going off. And that, I think, sometimes can be why transitions around situations are difficult, is because there's a mismatch of the understanding of the strategy or what somebody has said. There's obviously a million reasons. Sometimes children haven't heard that you've told them it's 20 minutes. But I think if you're not getting something that your child understands, then that could be why they might react in a certain way or push back.
I know with my daughter, it was gaming, but also I think TV programs before that. If you go dinner and they were halfway through a Peppa Pig episode, or they're playing an online game, can't pause it, completely get it, but it was like, I want to finish this. It's like, well, it's dinner. And it's like, basically what we're saying as adults is, I have my schedule, you need to fit into my schedule. Whereas what I learned to do is kind of, what are you watching? Cool. Right, don't start another episode because dinner will be ready shortly after this ends. Just that bit of prep work, 10 minutes before dinner was ready, has got rid of all issues around dinner times or meal times or leaving the house at weekends, because I've given them, okay, it's not a 10-minute which you lose track of time, or they're trying to watch that and then they suddenly have to stop halfway through and they really don't want to. They want to get to the end of that episode. We completely stopped all of that. And
what you said is completely makes sense. And it's really unreasonable of you to expect your child to turn their television off halfway through an episode. That would be like someone coming along and hanging up your phone when you're halfway through talking to someone. You'd think, well, hang on, I haven't actually finished what I was saying, or I was listening to what they were saying and you've just ended that. And so I think some of the outrage and anger that comes from children is without that prior warning. Whereas when you're sort of saying how many episodes, they get that. Or equally, as a parent, I would either delay dinner because it's not worth having the battle about that. You're either going to delay it by 10 minutes. It's not like they're in the middle of a film and then they say, I've got another hour and a half. Or you plan that proactively. And that's kind of a big part of what I do, is proactive parenting, so that we become less about putting out fires. And it's more about how can we proactively parent and manage situations. And mostly that's the kind of forward planning, is thinking ahead. Okay, I've said they can watch 3 episodes of Peppa Pig, so that will be 20 minutes, whatever it is, 15 minutes. So I know that I need to kind of get dinner ready after that. I can be putting it out or whatever, but no expectations of them before that. And I think when you kind of do that, it doesn't mean that your child will find it easy to turn it off, but it's about making situations easier is the difference, I think.
Definitely. It's understand it. The thing is, we all have what we want to do.
Yeah.
None of us wants to put the bin out. None of us want to put the bin out. None of us want to work. None of us, but you have to. Yep. And I think we need to teach our children, yes, this is what you want to do, but you have to do this. Why? It's just, you could go into that long answer if they're older, but you don't want to say because that's, I've learned with myself and my children that just because doesn't work, you actually have to give a real reason. And they get there, But it is, choose the battles which make sense. And if you have got a battle, just turn around and go, why are they picking a fight over when dinner is? Put
Yeah. And
yourself in
also,
their
how
shoes.
important is it? Yeah. What is the importance? I'm probably quite a bit more laid back about. I don't think I've ever used just because as a phrase, because I don't really have a sort of hierarchy system, I guess, in my house in that sense. So, but I think it's just how important is something to you in terms of does that need to be a battle that you're having all the time, like coming and sitting at the table for dinner? I'm sure we've all been brought up in houses where we weren't allowed to eat food unless we were sitting at the table. I know I was, but that actually isn't how I'm doing it in my house, because that wouldn't work. And it would likely lead to kind of daily pushback and battles. So was that how I thought that my parenting might be? Yes. Did I think we'd all sit at dinner and talk about our days? You know, but that's the reality that some parents really, really struggle with when they sort of come to me and they say, this is what I want for my family. This is something that's really important to me. And this is something my child can't tolerate. So that's where we have to learn to maybe let go of how we thought things would be and go back to that thing of parenting your child you have in front of you today. And if they can't manage that after a day at school, if that's just one ask too many, then how important does sitting at the table need to be? Can you all have dinner, on the floor? Can you do it as a carpet picnic? Can you have days where you have, dinner all together on the sofa? And it's still a connecting experience. You're still experiencing that all together. It's just not that formal thing of sitting at a table and you're all, forced to speak and share your day, which for some people, children and adults, they just don't really want to do that. People don't want to dissect their day. So I think it's, in all respects, it's kind of just reflecting as a parent. And I guess that's what I can do maybe with some parents, is help them to reflect, what can you let go of? And maybe they hadn't thought of letting go until someone says, do you need to keep pushing that? Could you do it in this way? Could you do it a few times a week in this way? So that I guess everyone has, maybe it's just Sunday that you all sit at the table or whatever. I think that's the thing. You have to parent differently when you have neurodivergent children. And obviously, every neurodivergent child is different. So some might happily sit at the table and eat dinner. So I'm just talking about if this is something that your child finds difficult, rather than keep having those daily battles, the same daily battles, nothing, we're not aiming to change our children. This is kind of my thing is, if you're looking for a coach who wants to support you to change your child, that's not me. I'm sort of more, how can we accommodate and adjust and adapt our lives to support our children?
If you're trying to change your child to fit into your schedule, it's not going to go well for you, for them, for your relationship, and many other things. We're quite lucky. We do sit at the table, and my daughter tells us about her day, always and only in chronological order, and you cannot interrupt.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go, can I have them in alphabetical order? And she gives me a look. So, but the thing is, going back to that interrupting, imagine walking up to your partner at 3:22 on Saturday and going, we're going out to, and then choose a restaurant and go now. And whatever they're doing, they have to leave.
Yeah.
No one, you can't do it at 5 o'clock, where as adults, we've learned 5, 6, it's probably going to be dinner time.
Yeah.
But actually, like really random time when actually they could be right in the middle of something. Yeah. That is kind of what it feels like for a child. Well, why are we going to that restaurant? Why have you chosen this? You're doing it at a random time, a random place for no reason, which doesn't make sense to them. They were already doing something else. They had the whole day scheduled out. That's what we're doing to our children. Now, for some children, they're like, yeah, cool, great, restaurant. For others, no, I need to finish this.
Yeah. And I think there's two things there. One, I always liken that to, you're at a dinner party and you just say to someone, right, we're leaving. People have in their head, they've mapped out their day, and even if your child is just not essentially doing anything, they are to them. They've got the plan of, they're nothing they're going to do all day. So I think there's one thing of you've changed something that they'd planned. And as we know, many children don't manage change very easily and big transitions. So you're trying to transition them out of one thing they'd had in their head to another. But also there's that thing of kind of hierarchy again of, I've decided that we're doing this and we're all, you're just going to come and do it with me. And that generally doesn't work very well. There's complete loss of autonomy for that child. They're not kind of part of that. And also there's no proactive parenting in that, as in, what does your child need to be successful? And by successful, I mean be able to manage a situation. So if I was taking my son out for lunch on Saturday, which I never would do anyway because it's the weekend, but let's just say I was, that planning would have taken several days in my head, and we would have made, where would I choose that would be the quietest possible place, and what are all the things I'd need to take, and before we go, what would the morning need to look like so that he would be as regulated as possible to do something that might be really difficult for him. So this is kind of the proactiveness, I guess, of parenting we so often need to do. And that's where, I guess, things again, that thing of, how can I make this easier for you? Or should we just not do it? So I guess there's those two things. If your child cannot do that, then it might be something you don't make them do. And many families, myself included, rarely go out to a restaurant because that would just be, it's not worth it. So, but if it's something you have to do, maybe it's for someone's birthday, a family birthday that you really have to go to, then it becomes a more planned thing. And what is all the support we can put in place for that child? And sometimes that might be that child being able to say at any point, okay, I've had enough now, can I go? And one parent might need to leave, or they can go and have a rest in the car, or they go for a walk midway through. I could talk for an hour and just kind of making something like that work. But yes, I think
we used to have like a sign.
Something. Yeah.
If you're doing that,
have a podcast episode, Dale.
Yeah, if you're doing that, that means I need to get out of here, Dad. Yeah. And we used to things like that, but we also had code words for them, which maybe. But what I always think about it is like the word dating your children sounds wrong, but if you're thinking back to dating days and you watch people on social media, like, where should we go? Where should we go for dinner? What are you going to wear? And you're arranging where you're going to have, what you're going to wear.
Yeah.
Are we just doing this? What time? And you have a conversation. You don't dictate.
Yeah.
And if you take that equal approach with your children, that I would like to go here, would you like to come? No. Okay, we won't go then.
Yeah.
Because if only one of you wants to go, why would you force the other one?
Exactly. It's going back to that relationship, isn't it? Of, and that's a really hard thing because it's a really new way of parenting. And it isn't just parenting neurodivergent children. Some people are parenting children that way because that just feels more authentic to, a more solid relationship and collaborative parenting, as opposed to that kind of, I'm just dictating to you because I'm the adult and you're the child. So I think, and it's a really different way. And some parents who, especially if they've been brought up in a very traditional way, and the grandparents are still very, very traditional about things, as in the parents' parents, but the child's grandparents, I think it's a really hard thing. And lots of, I guess, work I do for some families, it's around supporting their children. Definitely, that's the majority. But it can also, we might have sessions where it's just about the parent accepting and managing. And they sort of say, I've accepted my child, but I struggle with accepting, I guess, the life that I have to create to support my child. But that's hard. And it's okay to acknowledge that's hard. It doesn't mean you love your child any less. It's that thing of, two things can be true. I love my child, and some days this is really hard. I really respect my child's need to not go. And I feel a bit disappointed. We're not going to put that on our child, but as adults, that's the work we need to do with a coach or a therapist or our partners or friends, and have those conversations and not just blindly sort of pretend we're all accepting of this. And, we all imagined that our lives would be like this, never going out to a restaurant or whatever. So, we can be great supports for our children and really their biggest advocates. And then behind closed doors, that can be a struggle. And I think that's really important that parents can say, that to somebody and have somebody who they are saying that to, not their child. But if that is how you feel, then that's okay, because, that's all feelings are valid. So it's okay to find things difficult. It doesn't have any reflection on how you feel about your child.
For some people, if you think about our lives, we have a kind of maybe a plan for our lives. I don't think most of us men don't. We just ramble along and then things happen. And my wife wanted children, I wasn't. And I said, in a few years. And then a few years later, she asked me again, in a few years. When you said that a few years ago, and I did not have another excuse prepared. So I didn't have like children in my life plan and all these points. She obviously did. So my life segued. I absolutely love my kids. I would not have changed it. But I remember that first night finding out we were pregnant. Oh my God, what is going to happen? It was quite scary. And I think when you find out your child is neurodivergent, that's a different segue. You're going off in a new direction.
Yep.
And I think people have that. This is the direction I wanted to go in. So, but you're not. And there's nothing you can change. And if you keep trying to get back to that, you'll never get back there. And you'll just become upset that you can't get back there. But also you're distancing yourself from your children and your current life, where it's not, and it may be easy, it might not be easy, but I think the more you embrace that direction you're actually going in, the more you can enjoy it and the better the relationships are. We do things as my family, we do things our own way. We're not going on a big family holiday to the beach or Spain or somewhere. We're going to southern Germany because we thought that might be quite interesting. So we do our own things. I have to take all of my children's properly. I have to plan it all out and go through with each child. This is what we're going to do. Are you happy with this? Are you happy with this? Are you going to do this? This is going to be quite a long day. Is this going to be all right? But we get to have a holiday that everyone is enjoying.
Yeah.
And actually, for me, I love it. I love doing the things with my family. I'd take that over doing what I apparently thought I wanted to do on my own.
Absolutely. And I think, that whole thing of back to parenting the child that's standing in front of you, and parents just having, I guess, that confidence to just do it their way. And that's really hard to drown out the noise sometimes. And I think, some parents who talk to me, that's why they want to talk to me, is because the advice coming from their family or their friends, sometimes their partner, might be the sort of, look, we need to make up our children or your child just do it like this because that's what you're the adult. And maybe that doesn't feel right to them. So they want to speak to somebody who are like, please tell me that my gut feeling is right, that I don't want to do it like that. I want to parent them the way you've just described and the way that I talk about it, and that's okay. And they're almost wanting someone to say, yes, that is, it's okay to do it differently. You don't have to parent like everyone else. You don't have to, go to Spain and put your villa holiday on Instagram. And that doesn't mean, it's the same with Christmas, and Christmas is so loaded, and summer holidays are so tricky because everyone's highlights are full of that. But for some people, their holiday might be going to the same place every year. And lots of families I work with, that's kind of the thing that makes it successful, is they go to the same place every year. For some families, it might be going on holiday in the UK so they can drive, or somewhere close by they can drive. If you're going to France or whatever, so that they can load up the car with everything that their child needs to feel safe and secure in another kind of environment. So they have all their safe stuff from home to go with them. If you go on a plane, you can't really take much to help support them in a different environment, to help them regulate. So that might be another reason why people don't go abroad in terms of a plane holiday. So I think that can be a really hard thing to navigate as well. But I think if we sit as parents and we focus on all the stuff that maybe we're not getting that we wanted, or maybe doesn't look like how we thought it would be, then that's just not going to lead to kind of a happy life. It's going to always be challenging. There's always going to be that pull. So I think, like you said, where we can just embrace how it is and embrace the best bits we can, embrace the time with your child. And if your child doesn't want to go on holiday, then what can you do to make the summer or any holiday as fun for that person? And I guess another thing I say to parents is, who is this fun for? You have to really think, who is this fun for? Because so often, and with all the best intentions and love, parents think this might be fun for their child. They're not doing it to be, bad parents, but they do it thinking, yeah, of course my child would love this. But would they? Knowing your child in all these other situations, would they love that? And also, it's okay to have experienced that and you've messed up and you thought that your child loved that. And that's why it's that thing of we're always learning. You're using a past experience to think, okay, well, so we won't do that again because that didn't go well before. So why don't we let our child lead on what they might want to do for holiday?
And one thing I think, even if you do go, right, no, we're going to Spain, we're going to do the villa, we're going to do all of this, almost like, because everyone else has fun, so if we do it, we will have fun. It's probably going to go badly wrong.
Yeah, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
You're not going to get the holiday you wanted. It's going to get, and it would just, and one of the things, as we think about certainty, we like to know. And one of the things we almost got was a caravan.
Yeah.
Because my daughters would have their own bed, their own space. Doesn't matter where we went in the country or even Europe, that bed was going to be consistent. It was going to be, and they were like, yeah, quite happy with this. Yeah.
It's a safe space that they know. Yes.
So, and that's why I know loads of neurodivergent family loves Premier in.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to be the same, and it's recognition and it's those sorts of things is, okay, so what can we do? What's going to work well? And you can still have amazing holidays. Might not be the sun and the sea and all that sort of stuff in the way you thought it might be, but it could have a very different holiday. And I've had so many amazing little moments on holiday with my kids in the UK that I would not trade for anything else.
No. And I think that's the thing is, is just finding the joy in the moment and not kind of the pressure on what that moment should be. And that's really hard because we live in a world where everyone's sharing their life. And so it's hard to do it differently because we see what everyone else is doing. Whereas, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't know what other people were doing. We only kind of had their version of what they told us. So now when we see it, it's much harder to think, okay, it's okay to not do what everyone else is doing. But I know that's difficult. But I think, like you said, is it, if you go on the holiday that everyone else is doing, how much fun will that be for you all? And there definitely are ways we can make that easier. Going back to that, how can we make it easier? And that need for safety and familiarity. And maybe as a family, you go back to the same place in Spain every year. If that's really important to you that you go abroad, maybe you go back to the same place every year. So that does become familiar and safe. And I know families who do that. And there's lots we can do to help our children find those trips easier. But for others, that's just never going to be, not never, but maybe when they're younger, that's not going to be something that they'll manage easily. And so we have to think, what will be fun for them? What will be fun for us all?
Do you know a beach called West Wittering?
Oh, yeah, that's the one I go to all the time. It's my closest beach. We go there all the time. I love it. And I know that's where people holiday because it's absolutely beautiful.
My wife loves going to the beach, sitting in a chair, relaxing, enjoying the sun. My two neurodivergent children hate the sand.
Right, yeah.
Interesting. One of them's chosen to do marine science.
That's water.
And has to do stuff on the sand. I'm going, how? She went,
okay, yeah.
Again, it's one of those things for her. She was 16 years old or 17 years old, and she decided not looking like an idiot was more important than her fear of sand. And she walked on the sand and everything was fine. But this was before then. They hate the sand. They hate it on their feet and so on. And I'm literally going, well, you're a bit too young. I can't leave you at home for the day. Mum wants to go to the beach, but you don't want to. So we'll do a deal. And West Wittering is really cool. It's a lovely sandy beach.
Lovely, yeah.
Down sort of Hayling Island way. But there's a big car park, which is a field.
Yes.
It's a field. So grass and all that lot. And everyone parks up, and some people have their camper vans, and we've taken a barbecue down and had a barbecue on the field. And I just did a deal with, right, so we're going to go down to the beach. We're going to go on the beach for a bit in the morning and sit there. They can cope with it and they're fine. They can only cope with it for so long.
Yeah.
I said, we'll go back to the car and we'll have a barbecue for lunch. And after that, you two can just relax and read and do whatever you want at the car, have the car keys, go get an ice cream from the shop. And me and Mum will sit on the beach the rest of the day. And it worked well. My wife's going, but they're sitting in a car park. I went, yes, technically it's where the cars are parked, but it's just a field to them.
Yeah.
And it's a nice
It's having
place
an ice
to relax.
cream in a field.
Yeah. And I was like, but they're happy. And it is. And it was all that we got that compromising bit. As they get older, we were able to work out, we want this, but you want that. And it is just about, and generally we do avoid anything to do with beaches as a family.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can just go, we don't go to beaches because you lot don't want it, but Mum wants it. So as they get older, they get that. They understand that actually, okay, I can't, but what I could do is this. And they will then try and accommodate.
Yeah. I guess because they have, had that example of being sort of how we can make accommodations around a situation, how we can make that situation easier when there's something we have to do. And also you've allowed them to advocate for themselves. That whole thing of, parents often want their children to be able to advocate for themselves, but a child is never going to be able to learn how to advocate for themselves if, one, you haven't modelled it, and two, you haven't invited it back from your child. So we obviously need to model advocating, and we do that when our children see us advocating for them in situations or they overhear it. But we need to invite our children to advocate for themselves. There's that kind of how could we make this work? Do you want to go to this thing? No. Okay. So if a child has never been invited to say no or allowed to say no, then they'll have no experience of doing that when they're older or at school or whatever. So I think we invite them to advocate for themselves, and we also create opportunities where they can. So do you want to do this? Yes or no? And then when we're there, kind of constantly checking in, not constantly, but, just checking in and again, allowing the advocacy. Are you still okay here? Do you need to leave? So I think that's just for me, that's such a big part of parenting a neurodivergent child is, one, yes, putting in all those accommodations and support ourselves, but for children to be part of that so they learn to grow up and do that with friends and one day their own partners and workplaces and things like that. So I think it's that whole thing of, children can never regulate emotions that they're not ever allowed to have kind of at home, if they've never experienced that emotion. If you're not allowed to have that emotion, anger at home, how can you ever learn to regulate it? But it's the same. If you're never allowed to say no at home, if you're not allowed to advocate for yourself with your parents, then how can you possibly feel confident to go out into the world and do that with strangers?
That is actually really important. I've never taken into account that actually, being able to say no to your parents and be listened to and experience that teaches you something that actually, and if that's not going to happen at home, it's never going to happen anywhere else.
It teaches you something about healthy relationships, that it is based on that kind of mutual respect and mutual understanding of we both, like you said about dating your children, it's a relationship. It's not a dictatorship. It's very different, I guess, to how parenting used to be. And so if we want our children to grow up feeling empowered to be able to do these things, absolutely, they need to be able to say no to us, and we respect that no. So that if they're in a situation when they're older and they try to advocate for themselves and someone won't listen to their no, then they might think, okay, well, that doesn't feel comfortable for me, or that doesn't feel right, because I've been brought up to know that when someone loves me, that they will listen to my no's and that they will respect my no's. It doesn't always mean that they'll do everything you say based on that no, but they'll hear that no and they'll talk about that no. And sometimes with children, they might say, no, I'm not going to go to the dentist or the doctors. Now, maybe they have to do that, but we've still heard them. I've heard that you said no, and I totally get you don't want to do that. And this is something we need to do. So how can we make that easier? Or you don't want to go to Granny's 80th barbecue. Okay, you don't need to. That's fine. It's not something that you have to do. one of us can go and one of us can stay at home, or whatever that is, or we just won't. So I think it's not just that sort of, I'm the parent, you're the child, I've said we're doing it, so we're just going to do it, because that's just, it's not going to allow people to grow up feeling empowered and confident.
And that's why we have such a mental health crisis in lots of young men.
And why we have adults who have no experience of that. Adults who have no experience of boundaries, how to set a boundary, and parents who sort of say to me, I don't know how to set a boundary with their own parents in a situation like Christmas or something. How do I say to my parents, it's okay if my child gets down from the table and walks around, because I was never allowed to do that as a child. So it is really hard. Very few of us were brought up being able to do that. So how do we do that as adults? So again, that's just, it's part of the work, and it's not easy. And I hope that's something that I can, help parents with, and amazing podcasts and resources out there can help parents to feel less alone, that they're not the only ones finding this difficult. And also they're not the only ones doing it like that. They're not the only ones kind of doing Christmas differently or doing summer differently. And that's really validating when you know that you're not the only one feeling like that.
Now, I'm going to wrap it up here, even though I've got loads of things I want to say. And basically today we've talked a lot about kind of us as a parent and our children. We've done it kind of in a bit of an isolation way. And kind of in the stuff you sent me beforehand, you wanted to talk about play dates and parties and holiday camps and which, as we get, so can we
Only if we're touching upon summer.
Can we record another episode where you're going to continue this conversation, but we're now going to move on to kind of, which we just touched on at the moment, of this is what I want, but we've got to fit in with other things and how we can do that. Would that be a good idea?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm going to wrap it up then. Really enjoyed the conversation. As I said, I keep going, no. I could keep as always, I can keep the conversation going for ages.
Forever, yes. Can I wrap up? Not wrap up. Can I add one last thing in? What you said right at the beginning about, parenting the past, present and future. And I just want to say to any parent who's listening to this about the future is, no decision is forever. So if you're struggling with a decision to do with your child, whether it's to do with schooling and those are often the big decisions, no decision is forever. So just kind of focus on your child today and what your child needs right now, and not worry about what that will look like in 5 or 10 years time, because we've no idea what our children are going to be like in 5 or 10 years now. So if there's something your child can't do now, then just be okay with that now. You don't have to carry that weight of what that will mean for them when they're an adult. So just try to let that go and to just, parent the child that's standing in front of you today.
I think some people here, like neurodivergent is a destination of my child's life is never going to be this or it's never going to be that.
Yeah,
I think neurodivergent to me is a mode of transport. Yeah. It's a different mode of transport. No idea where you're going still. You might be standing instead of sitting. You might be doing this instead of that, but you still have no idea where you're going. So your child's life hasn't been written off.
No.
You might feel that everyone talking to you the way it might be, but actually it's not. It's a different transport and you do not know your destination. So do not write your child off. Do not listen to all those people saying, oh no, it must be so sad. No.
But also don't carry the weight of what they're going to do or be as an adult, because that's not important right now. When you've got a 6-year-old child who's really struggling with something, it doesn't matter what's going to happen when they're 20. You just have to do the right thing for them then. And, that's the best you can do.
The happier they are, the better your relationship with them at 6 years old, the better that outcome will be at 20.
Absolutely.
That's the two biggest things. That will be the big difference. I was going to ask you if you've got one more thing to say, but you've said your one more thing, so that's great. I don't have to ask you. As always, I'll be sharing links to you find out more about the work Kate does, and they'll be in the show notes. And as always, you'll find the show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on our website. So thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. You can find the links to subscribe across different podcast platforms on our website, which you haven't been to it, is the wonderfully titled thesencast.com. So thank you for listening to the show. And if you've enjoyed it, please share it with others. And everyone knows B Squared for helping schools to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. And over the last few years, we've been creating an inclusive assessment system that can be used with all pupils in primary schools. The system has different levels of details for different levels of ability, but it makes looking at whole school data and comparing your SEND and non-SEND pupils really, really simple. and it reduces teacher workload by only having to use one system. And our new features using AI to simplify report writing saves time even more, and also having one system saves schools money. And if you're interested and want to find out more, you'll find a link to the website and a link to book a meeting with me in the show notes. So please do that and find out what we can do to help you. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Bye, everyone.